everybody is having a very good week. What we are going to be doing now on the Starry Eyed Facebook page is a more regular live content video extravaganza where every Wednesday we're going to be just doing a live. I'm going to be talking about things that matter to me. And every Friday, and these are provisional, like if something blows up, then I'll change the dates, but I'm going to try not to. I'm going to do my best to rein in the inner chaos, Virgo. So on Friday, every week, the first two people will be eligible that speak in the comments will be eligible for a OM card reading or an oracle card reading. And then from that point, we will do questions and answers and just general chitty chat, catching up, seeing how we're all doing, that sort of thing. And that will be on the Friday. So just so everyone knows that that's going to be what's going to happen. I hope everybody's doing good. Let's get into the meat of this video. Are you a white witch or a black witch? Bitch, you should be neither, because like this topic irritates the living F out of me. And the reason being, there are many reasons. Okay, let's be calm. We're going to remain calm because this really does get to me. So I feel like the idea of the good witch, bad witch, light witch, dark witch, white witch, black witch nonsense actually comes from literature, actually comes from the human need to create a villain and a hero scenario so that people more easily relate to the content. That can be seen in literature back throughout the ages. It can be seen in movies and books and comics today. So generally speaking, it's an oversimplified way of getting you to root for a character in literature. And then people apply this to real life. This face. So if for anybody who's ever watched The Craft, which is a movie, that movie actually has a line in it which actually basically sums up magic in a really succinct way for a movie, seeing as we're talking about movies, which is true magic is neither black nor white. The goodness lies in the heart of the witch is the general gist. I would take it a step further. There is no good and bad. There is people. Who are witches underneath, right? You strip away all the outer trimmings. Who are they? They're human beings. Now, I have no problem with anyone dressing however they want, however they choose to outwardly express themselves, go for it. That's not what we're saying. You do what you do, you boo. You do you. So you want to wear like all black, all gothic, you want to be like, I feel you because I enjoy it too. Or you want to wear bright pinks and light and have fun with it and be, you do you. But you take everything off a person. You take the tribally makeup that you see all over the place as representative witches, or you take the heavy black kohl eyeliner off people, and underneath we're all human beings, and not a single human being on this planet thinks that they are the bad guy. Human beings are complicated. We have good days and bad days. We have a whole range, a whole plethora of emotions. We have a system which has trained us from birth to think of things as being good and bad. Like, this is an easy dichotomy. It's also a big part of established dogmatic religion, where the overall premise is there to frighten and control. Because if you're not a good girl or you're not a good boy, then you're going to hell or equivalent. You will be punished. A lot of people who come to witchcraft or paganism or both seek to remove the shackles of previous conditioning, whether it be from social situations or from religious situations, and to stay in this mindset of black versus white, and we're going to get to all the other implications later, I promise, is really harmful because it sets up us versus them. It sets up, we are our own heroes and these are the bad guys for reasons that we have made up because of differences in how we look, how we speak, what kind of witchcraft we practice, skin color, whatever it is. And that is not, it's not sustainable. It just continues into a outdated line of thought that is shunting people in boxes and saying that people are good or bad. People are not good and bad. People are complicated, sophisticated. People make mistakes. People act terribly in the moment for all sorts of reasons. People might have varying degrees of mental illness and all sorts of things that influence who they are in the moment. That doesn't epitomize who a person's soul is, and frankly, nobody has the right to be telling a person what their soul looks like, what kind of person they are underneath. You're a good witch, you're a bad witch, you're a black witch, you're a white witch, you're a right witch, you're a left witch. Light, dark. And the light, dark thing has bothered me my entire life. And I have talked about it quite a lot, but we're going to talk about it again. So the premise of white witch versus black witch, right, is the premise is that the white witch is of a light worker. You'll have heard of these phrases. A white witch, a light worker, working in the light, working for the good of all. They sometimes bring in the Wiccan read, which is Wiccan, it's not witchcraft. And that's the premise. And then the dark witchcraft premise is it's people who are working, it might be left-hand path, they're generally portrayed as more negative, maybe they're doing curse work, and demon work, maybe they're doing spirit work, and that tends to be the dark witchcraft, like over there. And then there's negative stereotypes placed on both, presumably from people who wholeheartedly believe they are one or the other. I'm going to go so carefully now because it does rile me up. Witchcraft is the path of balance. It is the middle pillar. It is the liminal road. It is people who walk between the mundane world in which we live and the world of the other, the world of spirits. There are many different definitions as to what makes a witch. A lot of that is personal. But the thing that I think really, really unites is that witches walk this balance. Some are more talented in certain areas than others, but all arts can fall into positive camps, quote unquote, and negative camps, quote unquote. And here's an example. Healing. Do you know you can curse to heal someone? You can curse an illness, a sickness, a cancerous tumor to heal someone. But cursing's in that evil camp, right? Do you know that healing is not always what you should be doing? If you, if you're thinking that you're in the light camp, using these phrases very lightly because I don't agree with them, and you I'm healing this person, I'm healing them, I'm helping them, it's a good thing. Did they ask? Because if you didn't get permission, it doesn't matter how sick they are. You've gone against their will. Now, for some people, they then decide morally, ethically, that they're okay with that because the outcome weighs more heavily, or the person isn't well enough to give consent. Ethics are on a scale, and they're all grayscale. You make the best decision you can in the moment for most people. Cursing can be protective. Another thing about healing, before I move on to that. Healing, what if you weren't meant to heal that person and you stuck your aura in and you did? What if they were meant to heal themselves and they could have, should have, and would have if you hadn't healed them? They would have learned a major life lesson in that, a magical lesson, a spiritual growth. And you had all the best intentions in the whole wide world. I completely believe you can. This is the problem. There isn't a good and a bad. There's just people and doing the best that we can and trying to figure out where we sit on a code of ethics. Now, there are people who sit in the light camp, or believe they sit in the light camp, the light worker camp, and they will be like, I have nothing to do with spirits cursing all the dead, right? These are all put over here in the negative darkness camp. Usually. Spirits, by the way, can be everything and are everything. If you take an animism view of the world, which I do, everything has a spirit, everything has a vibration, everything has a soul, everything. Plant, tree, flower, animal, us, and everything spirit in between. Everything has a spirit. Now, most people that think that there's a light camp, right, that working with herbs is fine and crystals is fine, but they have a spirit. You're doing spirit work by a different name. And then there's a big fear of death thing that comes in there, which if Chris was around, she could soapbox on for hours, right? There's a big fear of death that comes into that. And fear is a major pivotal driving point of division, of putting people into separate camps so we can label people and understand people. Witchcraft isn't good or bad. It's an art, it's a magical act, it's a connection to something other. It's liminal, it's balanced, it's in the middle. It's the middle path. And some days we might be a little bit more this way, and sometimes we might be a little more that way. Sometimes we might be cursing because we are at our wit's end with a situation. Now, I am of the opinion that you need to be able to know how to harm so you can heal. I'm also of the opinion that most people will have cursed in their life, and anyone who says otherwise is lying. Whether they have done it full-blown intentionally, or it's more of like an evil eye and passing thing, because everybody has anger. And that's usually what fuels, not always, but it's usually what fuels curse work. Now, I'm a believer in curse work. Why? Because there needs to be an answer when people have been abused and abused and abused to the point where they are at their wit's end, when they have tried everything in the mundane world, nothing is working, these people aren't leaving them alone. Maybe it's a stalker ex or an abusive family member, whatever it is. Like, I have been through some nasty shit. I have felt what that feels like. I know where those people are, and at some point they need to take their power back. And telling people to bless and forgive people isn't enough. You can make people who have been in the worst kind of situations feel like their pain means nothing to you, that they should just get over it, that they're never going to get any kind of justice because the justice system has failed them, which it proportionally does, by the way. The justice system is more likely to let you down than give you justice. You only have to look at the news stories daily where the guy who, hacked onto I've forgotten what he did. There was a guy, I think he hacked onto a rapist's computer and he exposed him, got more time in jail than the rapist. It's like twice as much. The world isn't a fair place. And magic is a reflection of the world, of the environment, of the social and spiritual ecosystem, and us, who are a part of that ecosystem. Nature is loving and cruel, quote unquote, all in one go. And people who have put those labels on, by the way, are us. We have a story of ethics that we tell ourselves. And that story of ethics that we tell ourselves changes depending on who we are, our life experiences, what we have been through, what our ideologies have been, all sorts of cultural and social background and bringing up, and so on and so forth. Basically, the crux of the whole thing is we are a little human generator, and we're generating our story at any given point, and we're more likely to focus on our story than anybody else's. Because we've lived it, we know it, we feel it, right? We feel that energy, we feel that system. And so we can get blinkered to other people's stories. And it is the easiest thing in the world to get into the us versus them mindset, because you don't know, understand, or empathize, whether it's not great, but it happens with other people's stories. Maybe other people are so far removed from your experiences, you just don't understand. And that's human, my friend. You cannot understand, that's okay. I think admitting that you don't understand somebody's experiences is actually a big move for humanity. A big move is then to listen rather than labeling. I will answer your question in just 1 minute. Questions in a minute, Rowan. I just want to finish this last point, and then I'll move into question bits and pieces. So the other side of this, lightness does not equate to goodness. And these are I'm using these terms very loosely, because what is good, what is bad? You know, humans make these things up. Just the same way as darkness does not equate to bad, to negativity. It's nonsense usually used to sell things to people as a simple-minded way of saying that you don't think people can understand a more complicated system of storytelling. It's to sell something 9 times out of 10, or it comes from a fear-based place. That's also possible. So other people have asserted that there is a bit of an inherent racism going on with lightness equals goodness and darkness equals evil. I can see their point. Also, I think this idea, like, I've said this for a very long time, and I keep saying it, and I will keep saying it. Lightness can be harmful as fuck. Excuse my French. You can be blinded. You can be burnt. You can lose all sense of inner peace because you have no way to sleep. If we're talking about, you know, in an environment of pure light and heat, right? Too close to the sun, what happens? You frizzle. Darkness can be calming, a womb space, a cave. It can be a place of your innermost sanctuary, your innermost thoughts. And there are beautiful blessings within each. And again, I feel like the key word there is that balance. The balance of light and dark within the environment and within us. And there is this undercurrent of us versus them, which feeds into labeling certain people as evil. And it can basically bring out the worst parts of humanity. It can bring out racism, it can bring out homophobia, and it feeds back into that dogmatic religion background. And I have been watching a lot of a kind of occult circle stuff, which feels like repackaged crazy Christianity right now, because it's like, well, this versus them, we are versus them, and it's like, how do we get to a place where we are all one and we are all connected and we are all each other's brother and sister and we're all trying to move forward together with an us versus them mindset? It doesn't balance out. These are some real problems with this. And I'm going to just move into the question section now because I'm trying not to it gets me irate, this subject, and it has been bothering me, and here we are on a video talking about it. So Rowena said, I agree so much with you. I wish we could chat about this as deeply. I think we would have a lot in common. What practices do you find help to heal anger? Do you think we attract everything that happens? I don't believe it at all. It annoys me. So the thing about you attract the bad stuff that happens to you is spiritual bypassing. And that falls in that light camp usually, because people in that who are like hardcore, I'm a light worker, I don't do anything dark, in that voice. People who, and they spiritual bypass. So they make out like you manifest the worst things that have ever happened to you, or you were meant to suffer, right? No, I feel like there is a system of free will and choice in our world. And sometimes bad things come into our life as the results of other people's shitty choices, or our mistakes can lead to negative situations for us. Sometimes we have to take personal responsibility too. But sometimes in this world, shit happens. And I don't feel that it is a balanced approach to say you brought that into your life or you deserved it. Again, that feels like that dogmatic religious thing, which is like, well, you must have done something in a past life to deserve it. We live in a world which is stacked against certain people. The system in which we have birthed into right now, that we're seeking to change, is stacked against us. And some people have everything they could ever need, and they have like all this like money and wealth and privilege and stuff, like, you know, the elite, the rich people. They have all of that from birth, and they are not going to struggle the way that most people do. And so they're less likely to come up against situations that other people do. And so in terms of that, that's spiritual bypassing. I don't like when people are like, well, you must have manifested this terrible thing that happened to you. No, we are human beings navigating the ecosystem. Much love to you too, Charlie. We are navigating the spiritual ecosystem and this road called life as best we can. Now, I think it can be helpful to see things being put in your way because you can overcome them. So it's like, this has been put in my way because the universe knows I've got this handle. I can get through this. And I think it's helpful to look at situations in terms of helping your personal growth. The way that you choose to react to these situations, the things that you learn from these situations, I think that can be helpful, because that's giving you like life lessons. So the next time a situation comes around, you know this situation, you know the best way for you to handle it, or you know the way not to handle it. That's life, that's falling over, that's learning lessons. I think that's a helpful way of looking at these situations. But in terms of like, you attracted it, no. And the other question was healing anger. So first and foremost, I'm going to say that I don't think you need to heal anger. Anger is not an inherently negative thing. Again, I don't think emotions belong in either camp. I think anger is a human emotion to be experienced and released. And that's true of most, if not all, emotional states. I think we work through in cycles of existence, and anger is something that we need to survive and to instigate change. It can be a real game changer in terms of social injustices or injustices and abuses, like I talked about in our own life. If we're angry enough, we change our lives and the world. Think about people who didn't have the right to vote. They got so angry, they went out there and they changed the world. There's an element of that sometimes too in like the climate change stuff, the fires in Australia that's happening too. There's a massive wave of empathy and trying to help people, which is beautiful, and animals and the planet. But there is also an anger in that undercurrent. There's an anger at the politicians who are doing nothing and are off golfing, and people who are not, you know, people who are bypassing that incident and this, that, and the other. And that anger actually shifts change. So I don't feel like anger is a negative emotion to be healed. I think it's something to be sat in, experienced, allowed to be released, analyzed, because we can sometimes get angry disproportionately. So if it's coming from us and it's like a toxic thing, we need to look at our shadows and such. But at the same time, it's not something that we heal out of ourselves. It's something we allow ourselves to experience, and then we move through it. And I think that is a healing process of itself, when you allow yourself to feel everybody's like when you allow yourself to feel when you allow yourself to feel anger and all the plethora of emotions, then you feel more balanced and you allow yourself humanity that underpins all of the witchcraft. So that's how I feel about those. In cases, I feel you cannot grow if you don't flux between fluxy between the dark and the light. Same with everything. Balance. I swear I say balance now at least once a week. Balance is probably my buzzword, because there is the world in which we live is determined to try and make us one or the other, right? And so we can judge the other usually. And I'm not okay with it. And going back to the black or white witchcraft, we sort of we covered some of the things people as light workers say is negative and things, but I should probably cover the other side, right? So we talked about the fact that spirits don't have to, and spirits aren't negative, right? So the spirit conjuration and necromancy. Do you know what necromancy can be? Like, people are like, necromancy's evil, it's in the evil camp. That can be talking to your grandmother. That's necromancy. You can be going to the church and lighting a candle for someone you've lost. That can be necromancy. You can be dreaming and having a conversation with somebody who's passed over. It's not inherently evil or negative, black. Also, it doesn't have to be done in the dark, which is really strange when you think about it. Like, maybe if you're grave robbing, it does, but other than that, like, don't do that. That's illegal. You'll get in mundane trouble for that. But like, most spirit work could be, you know, it doesn't have to be in the dark. I mean, in secrecy is probably a good idea for the most part, like, because, you know, that's my other point. Right, that was another point that I meant to bring up. I think, exactly. Praying to your grandma. It's necromancy. Necromancers. Yes. So a big point that I did want to bring up is why I think this is harmful in a different way than we've already discussed before we round up the video. So people in the world, not in the Western world, but people in the world, at least not yet, fingers crossed, touch wood, it doesn't come this way, are being harmed and killed for witchcraft. In certain places in the world, they are being labeled as evil and killed. That is the natural follow through, the end result of labeling black and white witchcraft. It's not okay, basically. It's really serious, and yes, it can be petty squabblings here for the most part over value judgments and labeling people and trying to make people feel shitty for one reason or another, because that's great, right? It's against the idea of oneness and connection, really. It's us versus them. That's like the mild form of what can happen. Like, you go right down that road, people can get labeled. It gets into Gestapo style, reporting your neighbors, handing your neighbors over because you don't like them, to be gas tanked to death. And it is happening in places in the world. There are people who are actually dead today, even recent news stories, stoned to death, hung for being witches. It's usually not witchcraft that they're actually being murdered for, by the way. It's not, such as we understand it today. But there is, of course, a history of that, isn't there? That is part of why we reclaim the word witch now, because people who were labeled by the hysteria of that dogmatic Christianity again were murdered for being different, for being midwives, for being widows, because somebody didn't like them. 9 times out of 10, it was nothing to do with actually practicing witchcraft. Like maybe there was some somewhere, but generally that's based on hysteria and the labeling. That's where that can go. And so there is a very serious detrimental side to that. Outside of labeling people and making out that one thing is good and one thing is bad, there is a very deadly end game to that, which is hurting other people, killing other people. And just because it's not happening in your backyard doesn't mean it's not happening. And the more that we realize that we are connected to the whole world, spirits, the physical manifestation of spirits in the mundane world, other people, living and dead, the less wiggle room there is for that kind of thinking. Because then we realize that we are all human. We all living our stories. It's not us versus them, good versus bad, blah, 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 blah. It's people doing the best they can in this world. I really don't like the whole good witch, bad witch thing. I just don't like it. And I think it is oversimplification, labeling, and advertising, to be honest with you. It's no good. So if there aren't any questions or any points that anyone wants me to address that I haven't already addressed, I will wait a couple of minutes. Then I will round down the video. I'm going to aim around 30 minutes for these if I'm doing 2 a week. So I still have things to say. I hope you guys enjoyed the fun background. We're going to have more witchy backgrounds because that's fun. And yeah, so that's how I feel about it. And honestly, I honestly feel like they are labels that don't even truly exist. I think they're just made up. I think it's make-believe to make people feel like they can belong in one sense and judge in another. And it's a get out of empathy free card that I don't agree with at all. Awesome. So thank you guys for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're watching this on repeat or on YouTube later, I hope you enjoy it too. It was and will continue to be live on Facebook first. So if you want to ask questions at any given point, it's much easier for you to come on Facebook and have a chat. And again, we will be doing the Oracle card or Ohm card on... No, we won't. We will not be doing it this Friday. We will be doing it from next Friday. So I just realized that I'm completely busy on Friday. So we will start it next week with the video in the middle of the week, an Oracle card at the end, but that will be coming next week. Many blessings. Thank you guys for being here. I'll catch you next time.